Unit Standard 242816. Conduct a structured meeting. Now, whether you're holding a meeting with one or more persons, it will be more productive if you conduct a structured meeting. There should always be a purpose for a meeting. Using the format and rules pertaining to meeting procedure will keep you in control and have a record of the meeting. Now, many people do not like attending meetings for a variety of reasons, yet if properly structured, they can be a useful tool. What do you dislike about meetings? How should meetings be conducted? Are the questions that you need to be asking yourselves. There are different types of meetings and they all have different purposes. So we have meetings maybe because we want to solve problems, and our content will be identifying and discussing those problems. Blue sky, the simulation and stimulation of new ideas. Blue sky means the sky is the limit. Briefing new staff on new ideas, methods, procedures or policies. Or we might have to review or do a post-mortem, giving feedback on a previous session or assessing progress made. Or we might be negotiating an agreement or interviewing a person for a specific purpose or consulting a person. Conducting disciplinary proceedings, which is standard practice for managers. Holding a committee meeting, a formal meeting required by law or a business practice, or the body corporate kind of meeting if you live in a sectional title property. I wonder what other meetings you might anticipate holding or you have experience of. Meetings should not be convened if there is a cheaper or a better way to get a job done. Decide the purpose and outcome of a meeting. For this reason, a complete agenda has to be compiled. Identify the correct participants for the meeting. Do not omit people essential to the subjects being discussed. Keep to the minimum people for manageable reasons, so you can keep control of the meeting. Some people are only needed for one segment of a meeting. Invite them only for that segment. Write to all participants, explain the reason for the meeting and what the intended objective is. This gives them a clear idea of the issues involved and what they have to prepare. The agenda has to be sent early enough to enable them to have sufficient time to prepare. Mid-morning meetings are more productive than afternoon meetings. Identify the correct participants for the meeting, those with the power to vet and approve a decision that is taken at the meeting will save you time. The correct number of people to comply with the meeting required for a quorum in terms of the constitution of that committee or organization might also need to be taken into account, and that might have an impact on the number of people you need to invite. The secretary, make sure she's present because she has to take the minutes. Book and set up the meeting room with all the equipment. Make sure it is in working order, and there is a backup plan. Electrical equipment can be unpredictable sometimes. Based on the agenda, do you need documents, handouts, the previous minutes, if not already sent to the participants? Plan the layout and the seating of the room for effective interaction. How will the meeting be conducted? What are the chairperson's preferences? Will refreshments be served? And if so, when and where? Who will be the responsible person dealing with it? Will audio-visual material be used? What light effects, if any, will be used? Why is the meeting called? What is the topic for discussion? Which files, previous minutes, statistics and balance sheets might be needed? So planning a meeting is something that needs to take careful consideration to hold a successful meeting and get the desired results. What is the difference between formal meetings, that is, meetings that are required by law, for example, the body corporate meeting in a sectional title complex, and some of us might be part of that, and there are various other types of meetings. What are the various office bearers in a formal meeting? Consider that you have to have a chairperson who's going to be in control, the secretary who's going to need to take the minutes, and the treasurer who might have to discuss the finances. They all have specific duties to perform during and after the meetings. The secretary is normally responsible for keeping the records in a minute book, keeping a register and a correspondence file, and ensuring the chairperson is kept up to date. The treasurer must keep accurate accounts of all financial transactions and help the chairman prepare the agenda and check all the rules in the constitution that they have been correctly followed. What are the practical things you can do to ensure a successful meeting as a participant? If information is required for the meeting from another source, acquire it in advance. If you are a spokesman for a team, allow adequate time for discussions beforehand, and then at the meeting, contribute to your maximum ability. Now let's take a look at the roles of the chairman. If you are the chairperson, you need to acknowledge achievements, respect opinions, disagree with facts, not opinions. You need to be able to exercise control without being autocratic. Do not allow destructive conflict and arguments. Summarize the progress regularly and get agreement of summaries. Stick to the time allocated for each item. Allow for creative expression of new ideas. At the end, summarize the decisions reached against the agenda and its objectives. Keep a record of the decisions made, and this is done by ensuring that the minutes are recorded accurately. At the close of the meeting, get agreement for the next meeting. The chairperson's role is also to ensure that the results of the meeting are communicated and the minutes are checked for accuracy and distributed. These tasks can be delegated, but accountability still rests with the chairperson of the meeting to ensure these responsibilities are effectively carried out. What should go on to a typical agenda? The agenda will help to make effective use of the allocated time for the meeting. The meeting is opened by the chairperson, who asks if there are any apologies from those who were invited. The attendees are also acknowledged as being present in those minutes. If the minutes were not circulated beforehand, then they might have to be read, and the chairperson will have to pose the question to the House if this is a true reflection of the previous meeting, and can they be accepted as such. So someone has to propose that the minutes are accepted, and someone has to second that proposal. In other words, agree to support the decision. The next point is matters arising from the previous minutes that had to be actioned. What were the outcomes? Are there any items that now need to be carried forward for further discussion? The typical formal agenda varies slightly. A more formal agenda for meetings might be run because they are a legal requirement. To have a properly constituted meeting may have a slightly different agenda which focuses more on the finances because there may be public funds like levies, etc. Or there may be a director's report on the state of the company. These formal meetings may follow more strict protocols and use more formal language. For example, motion and matters arising. Now, motion really is just a formal proposal put to a committee by a proposer and is either seconded or not supported. In other words, motions must be proposed and seconded. If a motion is carried, it then becomes a resolution. There are very specific rules for proposing a motion, making a resolution, and making amendments. Normal business meetings may be less formal unless it was the director meeting with the shareholders. In more formal meetings, the financials may be explained by the chief financial officer, and he could also have this discussion under reports. If the office bearers need to be changed because this was a meeting to re-elect them for another term of office, it would go as a special item on the agenda under elections. Under the heading General are sometimes items that have arisen after the agenda was circulated, or urgent items that have to be discussed because they have emerged suddenly and need to be addressed. Once all the items on the agenda have been discussed, the chairperson will formally close the meeting, and he might have some closing remarks that he wants to make before scheduling the next meeting by getting consensus of a suitable date. Minutes are the record of the discussions and need to be recorded accurately. So what guidelines do we have for that? If there were emotive issues, only the facts would be recorded, clearly and impartially. There should be an accurate reflection of all the proceedings and resolutions. Minutes should be concise and to the point. Members who did not attend should be able to have a clear picture of discussions. The language must be in the past tense and the third person. Exact words of motions, the formal proposals put to a committee, and the names of the proposer and seconder of every motion must be recorded. The minutes must record the time, the date, and the venue, and who chaired the meeting, and apologies should be noted. If there's a vote, in favor or against the motion, it should be reflected. The minutes need to be checked for accuracy prior to distribution. Compile an action list to ensure that the decisions of a meeting are implemented and indicate how the chairperson could monitor them. Review the meeting and suggest how the effectiveness of future meetings could be enhanced. Conflict situations invariably arise. And sometimes if a meeting is called and the chairperson anticipates that there could be some conflict due to contentious issues being discussed, the chairperson can preempt the situation by reiterating the ground rules that apply to good meeting practice, such as mutual respect and not making remarks personal. Timely and assertive intervention by the chairperson is vital to maintain control and decorum. It is an important role that the chairperson plays to diffuse the situation before it gets out of control. Moving the meeting along when someone keeps bringing up the meeting back to points that have been discussed at great length and no resolution can be reached can create a flashpoint, especially when one person is dominating the meeting. So allowing everyone the opportunity to give their points of view, but the leader making the final decision, makes it less confrontational because no one can object or interrupt the person who has the floor. Consensus decision making is similar to the American jury system, where the issue is debated until there is a unanimous decision. Voting is more from the political arena, but it is used sometimes when a motion is put to the vote and then the majority wins. Some practical conflict handling tools that we might need to explore. The method used to solve conflict will depend on the circumstances and the time available. Here are some tools that you can use. The nominal group technique, where each individual gives their input, their ideas, their feedback first, and this is collated onto one paper or report or summary, and then the group goes through the list to select 3 or 4 of the most worthy ideas or priorities, and these are then explored and debated further with a view to seeking consensus. The decision matrix method is useful when multiple solutions with many variables are at play and could influence the decision. For example, how could we improve our customer service in a restaurant when this factor can be affected by the waiters, the quality and experience of the food, the ambience, the size of the restaurant, and how busy it is? We will then use a decision-making matrix which is weighted in order to arrive at a decision. A few other conflict handling tools could be force field analysis, where all arguments are considered for and against keeping the status quo, and all arguments are considered for and against the change. The technique is useful to make a go or no-go decision. Once you have done your analysis, based on the weighting you've allocated to the pros and the cons, you might total up and then decide how to strengthen the pro criteria and weaken the con criteria to move forward strongly in the direction you want to go. Conflict management is a skill that can be learnt, and the chairperson is the gatekeeper who prevents the meeting from going down a road of no return. Some of the techniques that one could use would be to summarize the discussion and isolate the areas that are in conflict. Agree on what is acceptable so that the sticking points can be dealt with in isolation. These can then be evaluated as deal breakers or not, and compromises can be explored. Redirecting sometimes needs to be used, as the meeting could have got sidetracked and emotional. the chairperson can redirect the meeting to what is really at stake. Are we trying to win a battle, or are we trying to win the war? Which really speaks to the bigger picture. Rephrasing might allow for taking out emotive language that would otherwise create a minefield for disaster. Paraphrasing could help state the issues clearly and avoid confusion and misinterpretation.